Welcome to Victory Quilts. I'm Eleanor Burns. This is a series about the 1940s. The United States citizens of the 40s have been called the greatest generation on earth. They were united with a common cause of winning World War II and keeping the home front intact. The blocks in Victory Quilts tell the story of the decade. Well, all 20 blocks are traditional blocks, taken from newspapers or magazines from that time period. I used Barbara Brackman's Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns as my reference guide. This quilt is an 18 12-inch block quilt with blocks set on point. Lattice and cornerstones are between the blocks. Of course, I use patriotic fabrics with flag red, cadet blue, and star-studded yellow. The quilting is magnificent. There are wonderful feathers in the side triangles, some stars stippled around the swag, and then swirls on top of the lattice. Well, every block in this quilt has significance and a story to tell. Roosevelt was president in 1940, and he told the country, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." Well, this block is Mr. Roosevelt's bow tie, and it's made with triangle piece squares. Well, his faithful companion Fala is on the opposite end of the row, made with applique. Oh, it's just so much fun. Well, World War II had already started in Europe, but we, as a country, chose to stay out of the war and remain silent. The beautiful silent star rests between Roosevelt and Fala. You know, even though we weren't in the war, we did send comfort quilts to war-torn Europe. This block was designed by the Kansas City Star in 1940. The block is easily strip-pieced. Well, life was good, and represented by the 1941 9-patch published in the Kansas City Star, life was really good. The bombing of Pearl Harbor changed everything, and we could no longer remain silent. This is the Skyrocket block, designed by Ruby McKim. The center of the block is an easy star, and then the rockets are cut from templates. Patriotism ran high, and the Kansas City Star ran Star Spangled Banner. And as men enlisted in the service, the Army Star is in the next row. Supplies were sent to the troops overseas, and sugar rationing happened. It's represented by the broken sugar bowl block. The airplane block is for our WASPs, the Women Air Service Patrol. And the propeller block is for all the Rosie the Riveters. We're now on the bottom row with the Liberty Star and the end of the war on September 2nd, 1945. Soldiers came home to waiting brides and the bride's bouquet. Well, you can make this very same block in 6-inch side. Oh, it's just a great fun quilt to make. Exactly the same blocks, just a little smaller. Well, stippling surrounds the stars in the side triangles, and then feathers surround the swag border. They are magnificent. These quilts are perfect for the heroes in your life. So let's get started. It's time to strike up the band and gather up your fabric. Now, I know you probably have plenty of fabric, and so do I. You know, I actually bought a second home just to store my fabric in, but Victory Quilts needs a special fabric. So go ahead and get your pencil, write all of this down. Start with the focus fabric. A large scale floral is very 1940s. Well, pick something like this, Patriotic Floral. You can see it's got the red in it, a touch of green, touch of yellow, and lots of blue. Now, if you're not exactly sure which colors to select, look at the little dots along the selvage edge, and you can just pull them out. Well, in this layout, I have 5 different reds. I varied the scales and the values. So from my large scale into a small scale with dots. Love a stripe, very appropriate for the 40s. This is a geometric, and you have to have stars. Oh, they're great, just to sparkle right through there. Well then, how about just 2 pieces of green? And that'll add just a little green, but not too much. And you have to have yellow. Oh, in every quilt, you need a touch of yellow. You can see I have 3 different values, 3 different scales of yellow to choose from. And then on the blue side, I have 6 different blues, starting with a very light, a large polka dots, very cute, stripe again, little floral, stars, very geometric, star-spangled for certain. And if you want just a piece of black for Fala, the Scotty dog. Now, if you're going to make 12-inch blocks, you need to have fat quarters of all of these pieces. If you just want to make the cute little 6-inch, then just select fat 8s for the 6-inch blocks. Well, now how about background? For the blocks, you can have 2 yards for the 12-inch, 1 yard for the 6-inch. You can combine them if you would like, or use only one background. You need 7 yards total for the queen size quilt of the background. And then remember some cornerstones. Oh, you don't need much. How about 1/3 of a yard will be fine. Now in the quilt I showed you, there are swags. You've got a top swag and a bottom swag. 2 different prints that are going to work great together. How about 1 yard to 1 1/3 yards? That will be enough. And the swags are actually made with fusible interfacing. Then you can turn under the raw edges. Well, we've got stars too on top of the swags. And this is that great navy with that geometric design in it. The stars are on paperback fusible web. So you've got to gather all of these supplies. If you don't want a swag, how about a stripe? A stripe looks great, and you can get it in either red, white, or blue. That will be perfect. Well, for the backing, I like a large scale print. If you can find something with flags, it just is the finishing touch to Victory Quilts. Now, what I like to do is just sit down, get my book, and cut all day long. Get all of my blocks prepared and individually place them in a plastic bag. So when I have a few minutes, I can just sit, sew, and stitch up that block. Well, I'm ready to cut, so let's get going. Our first block is 1941 9 patch. Well, life was good in 1941. High priority was placed on marriage and family. The man was the head of the household, and the woman was in charge of the children, the house, the cooking, and the cleaning. Oh, life was good. Well, this is what 1941 9 patch looks like. It has 4 star points, a center, and 4 corners. Now, the cutting for the 12-inch block is here, and this is for the 6-inch block. Well, 1941 9 patch first appeared in the Kansas City Star. The Kansas City Star would accept submissions from readers, and this was sent by Edith Gray from Arkansas, and she designed it. Now, she had a triangle here for the star points, and then you inset the triangle into this piece cut on the fold. Well, it looks pretty tricky to me, but we have a much easier way. We're going to make 4 star points and use this ruler to help us square them up so they're perfect. You start out with 2 different sizes of squares. This is the background. It is 5.5 inches square. This is the 7-inch for the star points. You put them right sides together and center the small one right on top. And you always know if you have it centered perfectly, if you place your ruler from corner to corner, it touches all 4 corners. You just draw diagonal line. Sounds pretty easy to me. And then just take pins and place them on two sides of the line. That way your pieces will not slip around. I have a 1/4 inch foot on my machine. I'm just going to drop the bar and my foot on the line. And so I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch away. And that way I have a perfect 1/4 inch going down there. Just raise your presser foot, turn it around, and sew a second 1/4 inch away. Now, if you just go ahead and you measure, the distance between these two rows of stitching should be a 1/2 inch. And then you know you're perfect. Well, this is looking good. So now that we have the 1/4 inch seams in, just take your ruler and your cutter, put your ruler back on that diagonal line, cut them in half, and you have two. Now, looking good, looks pretty strange. I'm just going to take these two pieces, and regardless of color, you're going to place the large triangle on the top, set the seam, open, and press so that the seam is actually behind the large triangle. These are such strange pieces to work with. You know that in 1941 that the minimum wage was only 43 cents an hour. Oh my gosh, 43 cents or a yearly salary of $1,300. That doesn't buy much fabric, does it? Okay, now let's take these two pieces and place them right sides together. Now the important part is that you don't line up the seams. You don't match these seams, but you line up the outside edges. Okay, remember that, the outside edges. Just do it as best as you can. The best part is that these pieces are oversized, so if they're not perfect, it doesn't really matter. We'll make them perfect later. Draw another diagonal line, corner to corner. Put those pins in again. Now, this time, you've got to grab a stiletto because there are seams on the top and there are seams on the bottom, and you do not want them to flip. Okay, start sewing that 1/4 inch away, and make sure you hold down your seam with your stiletto so it doesn't flip. There's one underneath as well, so hold down on the other side. It makes it so much easier if you don't mess up on that seam. Keep it nice and flat. Okay, turn it around. Same thing on the other side. 1/4 inch. Hold the seam, although it's underneath. Make sure you keep it flat. And right along there. Pretty easy. Now, you want to cut one more time. Take your ruler and your cutter and cut your thread. And then line up the ruler on your line, cut it in half. Now when you look at it, you go, oh my gosh, I messed up. But this is how it's supposed to look. It's perfect. Actually, if you fold it in half, there's your star point. And there are two of them, just like this. So you get your total of 4 points. Now we want to press the seams in a certain way, always away from that white triangle. So take your two ends and fold them in half. And then with your tip of your scissors, just clip right up to the stitching. So that when you press, then you turn it right side up and press straight into that white triangle, the geese. Do it on one side, turn it around, kind of hold it up like this, in from the white triangle, and then I always like to check on the back. Make sure there's nothing twisted around so that you can see how they're split on the back side. This is perfect. Now comes the magic of the ruler. If you have a small cutting mat, place your patch on your small cutting mat, and then your ruler is next. Now this says the 2x4 finished geese, and that's what we're making for our 12-inch block. So line up the green lines right on the seam. You have your 1/4 inch seam at the top. It goes right into the points. Cut it in half to separate it. And now with a small mat, just turn so you can trim on all 4 sides. Just keep on twisting right around there and trim away any of the excess on the side of the ruler. And then this, just take it and get rid of it. And that is your perfect star points. You've got the 1/4 inch seam. They go right down into the corners like that. Well, you get 4 of them from those 2 squares, and I already have them set up. The next part is just to take 2.5 by 4.5 before it's finished. Take this and flip it right sides together to a rectangle of the same size. You're going to make 4 exactly alike. And you can see you want your stitches to cross right across that point. So just line it up, do that 1/4 inch seam so that your stitches are perfect. Needle down right across there. Hold that tip flat with your stiletto. And let's check. Let's check. Perfect. Right along there. Make 4 like this, and then we'll lay out our block. My points are sewn to my rectangles, and then I pressed my seams towards the rectangles, and this is what it looks like from the back side, so that when you stitch right across there like that, it's very sharp on the front side. Now these patches measure 4.5 inches, so sensibly, then the center is 4.5 inches, and the 4 corners are also 4.5 inches. So let's just lay out this block and take a look. Pretty easy. This is really good for beginners. Okay, then the 4 corners go like this. Now I like to sew vertical rows together. I like to just sew straight down and then go straight across. And from the back side, this is what the patch looks like. All of the seams are pressed away from the geese, and then in the final seam, to make everything lay really flat, the center seam is pressed towards the 2 outside edges. Perfect from this side. And so take a look from the front side. You can see that you have the seam right here for the 1/4 inch for the next block that when it goes together. Absolutely perfect. Well, that's the 12-inch block. It's 12.5 before it's finished at 12. Take a look at the 6-inch block. Now it's just so cute because these little patches are all 2.5 inches square. So it goes like 2, 4, 6 inches across. Now we can use the same ruler for the 6-inch. You just turn your ruler, let me show you on the red, so that this time you use the red lines for the 6-inch. It says 1 by 2 finished geese. And you just place, when you square it up, like this, and then just trim around the outside edge. Both blocks can be made with 1 ruler. Well, the inside is a lot of fun. That's a little fussy cut right there. I have a small 2.5-inch fussy cut ruler that I'm just going to section out this little flower right here. It's easiest if you place your fussy cut on a little cutting mat, just like I did with the geese ruler. Take your ruler and place the X right in the very center of the flower. Let's get that lined up perfectly. Looking good. Now the square is 2.5 inches. The ruler is 2.5 inches. That's the beauty of it. So once you place your square right on there, you never pick up your ruler until you have it perfectly sewn together, and that's what it's going to look like right there. Well, this center could be a 4.5-inch fussy cut, so let's grab up a 4.5-inch fussy cut ruler. There's the X. It's going to go right in the middle. Let's section off, I think like this. We'll just line it up perfectly, put the X right in the middle of the flower. This is pretty good, just cutting up this stripe and getting 2 different fussy cuts. Okay, turn your ruler right around, trimming on all 4 sides, and we'll see how we can just change the look of the block. Right in there like that. Very good. Well, my sister made this fussy cut quilt. It's all full of fussy cuts. Let me show you some of them. Right here is the 1941 9 patch, and she did different colors, different colorway other than the patriotic. Small fussy cut right in the middle, green star points, and she actually used 2 different colors of fabrics in her corners. Now over here is another block that's been fussy cut. The four corners are fussy cut, one right in the middle. Beautiful 6-inch blocks in a whole different colorway. And to finish it off, she did a ribbon border. It's actually made with very easy piecing, and the quilting is just fantastic in it. If you can see the beautiful heart-shaped quilting and the lines right along there, and on the outside edge, from this point out, just straight stitching. Well, this quilt is just full of different sizes of fussy cuts, a whole different colorway. Well, you know, in 1941, only 1 in 5 had a car. And we are lucky because everybody has a car these days. So why don't you just hop in your car, drive on down to the fabric store, get your fabric, and you are ready for Victory Quilts. The United States citizens of the 1940s have been called the greatest generation on earth. Well, my parents are part of that generation. In 1941, my mother, Irma Dora Drischel, was only 20, and father, Erwin Nagel, was 21. They were high school sweethearts, enjoying life with President Roosevelt in command. You know, they hoped to marry, but my grandmother disapproved. I mean, after all, Erwin was German, immigrating to America in 1929 when he was 9 years old. And Grandma knew about Hitler, the German leader. Well, life changed when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Just a few weeks later, on December 25th, my parents eloped. They were certain my dad would be drafted. They moved into this tiny house on Route 19 in Zelienople. Well, this little 1941 nine patch tells the story of their children. The 4 stars surrounding the center are for their 4 daughters. Well, Kathy, my oldest sister, was born in 1943 while father was in the service. I came in 1945, and then after the war, Patty came in 1946. She was the baby boomer. Well, I noticed my mother is wearing her high school ring, Zelienople High School. And then the last girl, Judy, came in 1949, right when father started his own business with the help of the GI Bill. But father would not rest with 4 daughters. He wouldn't give up until the boy, Bruce. Well, Bruce is the big star right here in the center. Well, the 4 stars on the corners are for their grandchildren. Now, we're using an even smaller geese ruler to make these stars. Well, the 2 top stars are for my sons, Grant and Orion. Here they are playing together. And then there are Bruce's children, Amy and Aaron. Well, life has now turned the century. So my parents' 2 great-grandchildren are on the back. Well, my nephew Aaron has a daughter, and her name is Olivia. So cute. And my son Grant has a daughter, and her name is Ellie. Well, I couldn't be a prouder grandmother. And I want you to notice there is lots more space on the back for more grandbabies. Just so much fun. Well, this 1941 nine patch was made by Sue Bouchard. She selected dark turquoise for her star points and a lighter turquoise for her blocks surrounding her center star. Now, I just love that medium scale flower fabric used with the turquoise. You know, Sue actually fussy cut the flowers for her 4 star centers. Amy Potter did some beautiful free motion quilting on the top, and then the feathers just stand out on the white borders. It's just beautiful. I thank my father and all the soldiers that fought for our freedom and for our future generations. Enjoy your quilting.